My name is Shanley,
And I'm Carl Cowden.
and we're here today to talk about how art is like a conversation. So let's begin. Carl, talk to me.
Well, art can come from anywhere and go to anywhere. There's really no limit to the possibilities as art is known today. And everything we do in art, in general, as humans, begins with an idea in our heads. So it's non-physical. As we know, as most people know, art, it is dimensional. It's either painting, drawing, sculpture, something physical that we see. So the visual is is the journey we are going on. We're going on a journey to create through as many of the media we can on a path that brings you through all the different medias of art, visual art.
And the ideas that we share when we talk, when you are sitting around a table, or when you're just meeting friends and you're talking about some ideas you had about this and that, those ideas, when they are shared and they become visual, that's the very beginning process of art. And this is where your brainstorming comes in, where words that are that you just are talking about or speaking about are placed on paper, is the beginning of the process of creating an art piece.
Or if words aren't enough, you can translate that to imagery, either drawing yourself, taking imagery from found places, of course, magazines, the internet, of course, is infinitely abundant of images to work from.
It's a way to connect. I mean, the conversation is all about connecting, and art is all about connecting as well, but it's more in a physical sense. It's connecting with objects that are either seen as ordinary, or objects that aren't always noticed as much in life, or that are taken for granted. And taking those items and either giving them a meaning or just playing with the process and bringing that process to light and using it as a communication tool with each other, so that you learn something about each person through a process.
Yeah, the different processes there are, again, stem from that idea, a general idea of what we're doing or want to accomplish. But in creating for a non-purpose, so to speak, just to enjoy yourself, just to experience creating without purpose, it's like, say, automatic writing. You're just writing what's coming out of your head. You can draw the same way. You can play with different elements in art, sculptural, everything from a collage of paper images to a collage of found objects. And they could be anything, rocks to sticks to wire to boxes, small or large. The scale is up to you, and what is around you. A lot of artists start with a little sketchbook. This is not a little sketchbook, honestly, but just a piece of paper.
Or cards, or something I happen to have around me, cards that were used.
Again, found.
If you can't find crayons or actual art pencils, you can use coffee, and a brush that you would use for makeup. So you could, or you'd use a spoon and putting that on cards or napkins, and molding them into an object. There are many ways to go about it. So. But in the beginning stages, which is just basically brainstorming, collaboration becomes a natural. And connecting with somebody that you're talking about with ideas, it's the beginning stage. So today we're going to take you on a journey through the basics of creating art. And
So from the idea, I'm going to take my thoughts of this process we're personally going through in trying to create this video, and my thought is a journey, and it's a theme that is I work through in my artwork, and it reminds me of some of the stories that I read when I was a kid about an animal that, and it describes how they grew up, their life generally, and how they grew up, so it's the path of their life. And so the character I work with is an elephant, sort of walking, doing a journey through hills and mountains and different places. It's usually a solo elephant, but it's a character I like to play with. It gives me a lot of room to play with the space on a page, but mostly it's easy and simple, and it still has a story. I like the stories that I can give to these images, basically. So I just sort of doodle shapes. Okay, for me the shape is the elephant walking can be usually from behind, because I'm showing the path he's going to, not where he came from. Looking forward. Looking behind is very easy, and sometimes there is a small part of the path behind that helps. So my elephant, he looks sad and lonely, really, but there's lots of other animals on the path as he goes. So, and I'm not really strict on my anatomy, that it has to look exactly like an elephant. And I really haven't even done a thorough study of elephants enough to do that. So it's the feel of what I'm trying to get across is this elephant, and I'm darkening it because it's sort of in silhouette.
And then what I'm doing is while he's talking, I'm basically looking at his features. I'm looking around me, and I work with a character that I began with a long time ago, and I have continued to just play with the variations on her features. I have a girl, I call her a girl, the pink girl, because she originally was pink, and I had started her a long time ago on drywall and larger than life, and I decided a long time ago after that I would begin to see how she would develop. So I put her on cards, I put her on all kinds of things, and I give her friends, I give her all kinds of things within the cards themselves, so that she's either lays on top of them or just all kinds of variations. It's just more about lines and shapes. I like to create the lines and the shapes, and more of a kinetic feel of an expression.
In the same way, I work defining some of my images. Trees look like, they could look like anything, really. There's so many different kinds of trees. You don't have to be specific, except that a branch breaks off into smaller branches infinitely. And I like to sort of show that as an idea of life and diversity, in that trees never look the same. He's always on a different path, different landscape. Even though it's similar, it's not quite the same. I might have different animals around him.
I like to use watercolor crayons when I draw because it's something that I can always take with me. I can go into a restaurant, and if I feel the need to, I can go ahead and pull out some cards that I have that are small size I keep with me, and I can go ahead and have my little small pack of crayons, and I just draw with them. Anything that I would think of, and then I can come back and I can add water to them later and maybe add more color or add to the cards as they go so that they develop. And just as I'm developing all the time as a person artistically and just in life, I like to have my artwork or my drawings, the beginnings of my artworks, continually evolve.
I've sort of got a general idea of what I want to do here. So drawing, I'm just sort of blocking in a shape, a color, form to get the idea of what I want. And that's really more important than even getting the details. Form and line. So lines, it's how you draw a line, soft, hard, multiple lines. I do a lot of overdrawing because your life moves, so nothing stays the same, literally. So I don't worry that it's done just right. I'm just kind of filling the space. So I've got a foreground, a middle ground, and that to me gives it some dimension already in a two-dimensional flat surface. And that's where I lead to. Ultimately, we're going to lead to more and more dimensions in what we are creating. And that's our journey. That's our plan in our journey. We've actually planned that, but at any stage,
Plans can change.
Plans can change. The
Ideas
journey can
change.
be, that can be a goal of the journey. You can say, oh, well, there's something fine. I like that. That's great. Now we can move on from there and do more.
Or add this, or maybe not do that. Let's
Just
try
finish it.
something different.
Exactly.
But the goal is always the same, is continue moving forward and to continue to try to add new processes to your art, to your how you see things.
Yes, because that's ultimately that's what we're doing here. We're creating ideas that we may use later. We never know, even in repeating imagery.
It's a way of processing
You learn,
thoughts.
right? You process. You're processing that same kind of idea again and again.
Or concept.
Get a different idea of it.
Different concepts
Just
or different
like-
perspectives of that concept of either time, space, movement, feelings, anything that you're dealing with at the time. Things that are if something's not going well or if you're having a hard time with it, a lot of times that comes up in the art we're doing. It's you process it, use your art as a processing tool to get through life, to get through the day, to get through step number one sometimes. And right now we've gone through step number one. We've brainstormed, we've talked about some ideas, some concepts. We've even started drawing some concepts. None of them necessarily have to be firm. None of these on the table are firm. But now we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to the next stage. The next stage is would be painting, but we're going to go ahead and do it in a different format. We're going to do it in screen printing. We're going to paint on a screen instead of just painting on a piece of paper. It's just a different process, a different way to look at things.
Just a little bit of a different medium than canvas, so to speak. It's just a stretched piece of fabric. So let's proceed.
All right, onward. And the journey begins. Okay, we're back. We are on to the next section. We're on to the next part of the process. We're going to be doing some screen printing slash painting.
But, and we'll be showing you two different methods, basically two different styles of people.
I'm a little more loose.
And I'm doing the controlled method, as is my nature. And so I'll take the image I was working with and apply some basic color to this image. I'm not going to be painting in details here because that's not the point. So I'm just painting directly on this piece of paper as opposed to directly
On the
screen.
screen, so.
Just to show you that it's basically the same kind of process.
And I am still using the same watercolor crayons that I was using over there on the couch. But this time I'm just doing a free-form method. I've got some mixed media underneath here that is just there for texture.
What is it?
It's just string. I found some string and I just threw it underneath the screen so that when I put the ink through it, it's got a new texture to it. What we're doing is in this process is we did the ideas, we did the brainstorming, which is the conceptual part of art, and then we went ahead and went on to the drawing, which is your next stage, which is getting it down on paper, and now we're going on to the painting where we're adding the texture, and
So
we're continuing to carve that space.
So what I did is I just put down some light blue for a sky space because that's obviously what it is, a landscape basically with an animal in it. And then I put down a dark blue and blended it so it's darker at the top, giving that kind of look, that faded look. Then I can add some more to put some of that blue back into the background, just as it's not dry yet, so it's not going to be completed there. Is there some water down there, please? We'll use a spray bottle instead of. So I'm just going to wet the brush with a spray bottle. But a cup of water would be much more effective at this stage, but we're all right. We'll work with what we have, and that's where part of this journey is all about. So as I'm painting again, I'm not worried about the details as much. I'm just plugging in colors here. I get a little bit of green.
And I'm just experimenting and playing with the different mediums, the paint versus the watercolor crayon, how it lays down, and what the actual piece looks like afterwards is not necessarily my goal. That will come another part of the process. That will be.
So I'm just showing you, just blocking in color can give you a lot to the image itself. I'm painting directly over the pencil because I'm going to come back with paint or pencil again, and then I'll go back to doing this on the screen right after this last bit of color. I'm trying to not mix up that color too much.
Once again, I'm working with lines. I'm just continuing to carve out this space. Lines, color, paint.
Over your shoulder. over time in the sky. As it goes closer to the horizon, the blue turns a little gray and even yellow sometimes. So that's just observations that I use when I paint. Now I'm going to translate that to my screen by, you've already got partial drawing. Right?
Yes, it is.
So it's already transferring through the fabric of the screen to her paper here. Mine has not yet. Now I will take a pencil. I can draw on the screen this little place. My shapes again. The elephant's round, long legs, tree over here. And this sort of plugs in the form, the road, the horizon line.
And I'm activating it with the water.
I'm gonna get
This is a beginning stage. It gives me a textural that I can add to later. Doesn't look like much now, but like I said, I'm usually right now doing the experimentals. Playing around with textures, the colors, seeing what goes together. Sort of carving out in space with color. Once it dries, I can always come back and add something to it. So it's always an evolving piece.
gray, but we don't have to make them literally gray. Since we are doing this quickly and abstractly. Just add a little bit more ink.
And I just went and I redid her face with a little bit of a different expression, a little tighter this time, a little bit less texture underneath. And then I will go ahead and I will wet that and then I will print it again on a different sheet of paper. And then after that, we'll be moving on to sculpture.
I want to make sure that I have a piece of paper under there before I print it. That's always. There you go. I'm going to want to hit mine with a little bit of water. This is acrylic ink, so it needs to be worked fairly quickly. It will dry in. But sometimes just that look of being dried in has its own effect. Okay, so I pull. As she's playing with the squeegee and with mini pulls, I'm going to try to do one pull and see what we get. It's called a pull, and you pull that ink across and push it through the screen. This look is another look. The yellow mesh actually made everything look green or yellow. And I didn't use a lot of reds. And so we get a very soft image, and we can play back on top of that. Let me do one more thing. So now that we still have ink in the screen, may I borrow some of your crayons, watercolor crayons?
Sure.
And this way, I can draw back into it. In printing, we have the option of a non-color. It's basically just a transparent base that will activate some of the ink that's in the screen. Give it something to push through without adding another color. It'll push through all the ink that's still in the screen. You'll see, as long as you see that color, there's still something there to print. We'll do this a few times. So there's a ghost, as we call it, leftover previous ink or color. All right, now I'm ready to pull.
This is the one I did
Flood
before.
it with that clear base so that it covers the whole thing and sort of activates that. I'm going to clean my hand real quick. Rags are nice to have handy. Okay, here we go. Whoa, okay. And wait till she's got a break in her drawing so I can peel it off. You'll see how much color has come out of the screen. And you have a little bit more. There's the elephant in the tree, the sky, some of the color is starting to fade. But I redefined some of the images with the crayon. So now we're going to go one more time. No more tape? I can take it? Sure. Okay. And I'm going to do one more what we call a ghost. What's left, what color is left in the screen. Saving what I've just printed or else it'll get muddy. In fact, I should show that. Show you what happens when, I've got, see, ideas come to you anywhere, anytime. So what I'm going to do is go with this idea I have of using this messy color in the screen, but I don't want it, that ink, or actually this darkness in the ink. I don't want it going through the sky, but this part of the picture being dark is okay for that. So what I'm going to do is flood it. And being there's so much transparency to it, you don't hardly notice any of that. Okay, one more time to print the whole thing this direction because the squeegee's that wide. There we go. Let's see what this ghost has produced. Sorry, were you printing? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So here's the ghost left of that. And it'll get lighter and lighter until it almost disappears, but you can keep adding to it as well. I'll do one more add, and I think we've proceeded from drawing to painting to printing. Yeah? Okay. And one more here. Let's go ahead and print this ghost back onto this image. And the idea is there to scrape it nice and hard along that edge so that you're pushing all the ink through. You see there's very little ghost left, but it did do a little definition in there. All right. I think we've come to the end of that. And we can move from this stage to sculpture from here. And obviously cleanup is a big step here, and we'll need to get to that, but we need to move on. Now we're at the sculptural part of our journey, where we've brought out wire because it relates so much to what we've been doing with drawing. It's a line. You can shape it straight or curved. And as I was drawing, I wasn't so concerned about the exact shape, that it should be perfect. So we can untangle it. That gives us more ideas for the work.
There's different size wires that you can do. This is an example of a wire piece. It's what they would call a maquette, or a bigger piece. And it is a form of an outside sculpture that I eventually would like to create. So I have, this is my very smallest maquette, and then I have a larger size of that. And that is one way I start with an idea after I've painted, drawn it, scribbled it out, and I use wire.
And I feel it out just as well, in that I'm thinking of my same imagery when I started drawing elephant. And I'm basically drawing the circles as I saw them to form an elephant shape. And I just keep curling that into a shape. Since it's already curled, it doesn't take much effort to make it into a maquette of what I'm going to have to remember that the elephant has legs. So let's give him a few legs.
Now my sculptures tend to be a little bit more about less objects or less concrete things,
Subjective
and more
imagery,
subjective imagery, but more about movement. What I work with when I'm working with the wire is I'm working with balancing the movement. Once, if I can do this, will it stay? How far can I push it over before it falls over? Will I be able to move it and to where it can still stand up on its own, but still move? Could, for this part, what could I add to this heavy-wise in weight, that how much to make it, that it could handle still, keep its form? And can everything around it move and hold on to its shape as well? And that's kind of where I go when I work with sculpture. And their sculpture can be, you add things that you find in parking lots, something in nature. Sticks can be added to wire. Here we have something that was made into a wreath. It can be taken apart and you can add this to wire. And once you start pulling things like this together, you go into the concept of, you go from sculpture to almost a different concept where it's all encompassing the mediums, which would be installation art. And that's where our last step shall be, is installation art.
And so being confined to the wire I'm confined to at the moment, I'm forcing myself into that. It's a challenge to get all of the shapes of an elephant out of this at this scale. So basically you have ears, you have your legs, you have your trunk, and a tail. And then I can fill this out with other wire. So I might just start here, wrapping the other direction, just to give him, and that gives the more what we call volume. It fills the lines, giving more shape, the roundness. I'm going to cut this because I don't want to have to angle it. And I'm going to cut it, looking for a place to cut it. Enough. Give his head some more body, some more thickness this way. And being that it is wire, you can keep bending it and reshaping it as you wish. It doesn't have to look just like what you want. It's the feel of it. You get the gesture, as I say. Gesture is an important part of drawing, where you're getting the action, the form, and the line. Twist those ears a little bit better. So I'm going to put his ears up a little bit more. See, the thing is with the wire, as Shannon said, part of it moves. When you move one part, the other part may move. So you keep adjusting and adjusting and adjusting. And it may be to the point where you like it, or it may constantly evolve if it's a piece you like to play with, even as you sit just to play with. You can get more elaborate. I can put more wire on it to define it more.
And this could be a small maquette or a small idea, or a way you would process an idea of the type of maybe installation art piece you'd want, what type of materials you'd want to find to create something. So when you're looking in the parking lot, you might want to look for, say, a natural version, like Spanish moss or something like that, that you could use to work with wire. And if you wanted to be bigger scale, you could use bigger scale wire. And then you could go ahead and use some moss with it, along with bigger sticks. You can always go bigger. And I think today we're going to go ahead and leave this as a small form of installation art. But in our next video, I would like to do a larger scale of installation art, where Carl will have his bunches of pieces of items, and I'll have a bunch of pieces of items, and we will see what each other makes, and then we will connect them together. And we will have a completed piece at the end, where we put both of our artworks together to make one whole piece.
So I've just tucked this on top of it. You can see that this is just it's a skin from an emulsion of paint, basically. And so we save parts like this. I can stick other things to that to fill out the form. But like Shannon's doing the same thing with in an abstract form, I'm trying to do that with other pieces. Yeah, that was cool. This is old sample books of adhesives, papers. And I'm just going to use parts of this to add to my elephant. Ears. Now they're a little more solid, not so transparent. My elephant has a yellow head. At least it will soon. Tear off pieces of this. Doesn't matter how neat they are, or whether there's lettering on it. You'll see how over the wire, just like the paint went over the pencil, this can go over the wire line, and I can make the elephant have a trunk. And I'd probably do the same thing with the legs, if we had that much time. So the elephant gets a trunk. All right. Let's squish his head in a little bit because he's going to stretch out his body a little bit. Tilt his head back, and he's back in business. He's kind of a running elephant now. And that kind of action always helps in trying to make something look like it's, especially animals. They are active. They never have it. And so now we can move with this idea of playing with the things that you have around you. We're going to move on to form of sculpture called installation art, where we pull together these kinds of things in a larger format.
And for this video, we will have it where we have it on a small scale, and then we will, for the next another portion, we will have it set up to where you can see in the background finished installation art pieces, and then you'll get to see us do the process in installation art. Thanks for joining us. I'm Shan Lee.
And I'm Carl Cowden.
We've enjoyed our journey with you. We'll see you again soon.